Thanks for tuning in to the Lifepoint videocast. Today you're going to watch the I Wish Jesus Never Said series, where Pastor Brad's going to be breaking down a few verses of the Bible that are difficult to live out, but essential to live out for our spiritual lives. If you have any questions or would like to give, you can go to Lifepoint.cc. We hope and pray that you are encouraged and challenged by these words today.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be with you. I'm so glad you're here. Man, when you drove in, you can see the progress on this crazy building. It's going up quick. Thank you to everybody that is making that possible to happen. It is not lost on us that this is a team effort. You know, church is a team sport, right? We're a family. We're in it together, and it's a good day. How many of you enjoyed yesterday? Welcome to Ohio. If you're new, good night. It went from sunny and not too horrible to terrifyingly windy to snowstorm to thunderstorm to trees down everywhere. Welcome. If you don't like it, hang around 10 minutes. It'll be different. It's good to be here this morning in breezy Ohio. I'm glad you're with us. We're going to start this series. You know, the title almost is just uncomfortable, isn't it? But how many of you have read things in the Bible that you read it and you go, I don't know that I even like that. Anybody? Yeah. The rest of you, when you get into the Bible, you'll read it too. It's in there. I promise you. Sorry, you just need more coffee. This is what happens when the pastor gets up at 5 a.m. all the time. You know, let me just ask real quick before I offend too many people. How many of you use Apple computers, not just iPhones, but how many of you are Apple people? Just go ahead. You can raise your hands like you're proud. Good. Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, I made the switch about a decade ago after my not so trusty Toshiba laptop. I mean, you know, I don't know if the gerbil went out in it or it was the last virus I had, but it gave up the ghost, and I made the switch to a MacBook. And I was pretty hesitant to go that route because, see, I'm cheap. And there are a few indicators, right? To get into the Apple world, there was a cost-price increase. And then there was a learning curve on the operating system. And so most of you in this crowd probably don't know this yet, but the older you get, the more resistant you are to change. Like learning new things isn't as fun as it used to be. You know, the only person that really likes change is a wet child. A wet baby likes change. Everybody else struggles with it. But the older you get, the more real the struggle becomes, right? It struggles real, Corey. So I made the switch. And after the first day of using my new MacBook, I just want you to know, I've never gone back and I've always paid for the upgrade. Because I learned the value-added proposition for me in that operating system was better and more intuitive, and there was just something about it, even though I was fearful and even though there was a cost to it that made me hesitant, when I bought in, I found its worth. When I bought in, I saw its value. It wasn't a concept anymore, it was an application. Now, I'm not here to sell you any device, I promise. But I want you to know, when I read the Bible and I see some of these things that Jesus said, they seem hard to wrap our minds around, and they seem difficult to embrace as an operating system. Some of the things that Jesus said absolutely cut to the core of who we are, and yet, right, if we live in this economy, if we live in this understanding that God is the king and the king makes the rules, and so the rules that he makes are the ones that we abide by, then we don't have the right or the authority to take out portions of his word and act as if they don't matter or that they don't apply. I mean, you can do it, but it comes at a cost. Right? You can choose not to pay your taxes, but at some point they find out. He just always already knows. So as we break into this teaching series, and we'll pick it up, so we're going to do one part, so we're going to be in it for 4 weeks, 4 messages over the next 5 weeks in this series, and then we'll pick it up in part 2 in the summer. But as we break into this, we're going to be looking at what has been called by Augustine the terrible petition. St. Augustine of Hippo, said this is the terrible petition. It's found in Matthew 6 and Luke 11. It's the 5th petition of the Lord's Prayer, and Jesus gets to this place where it's really uncomfortable. I'm going to read it to you, and it'll be on the screen. In the King James Version, it says this: Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. A couple years ago, I did a series on the Lord's Prayer. Each one of those petitions or stanzas are so deep and rich. In Luke 11, the disciples asked Jesus to teach them how to pray like John the Baptist had taught his disciples, and Jesus said, this then is how you ought to pray, and he taught them this prayer. It's a format. It's an understanding. It's a deep, rich context with which we who follow after Christ should be saying, align our lives in orientation to these truths. Forgive us our debts. In different interpretations or translations, it may say sins or transgressions. They all go back to the same root Greek word, which means debt. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Now really, I guess what I would say to you this morning is, forgiveness isn't something that Jesus took a casual approach to in his teachings. It's not something that he just said, it'd be a good idea. If you don't have anything else going on, you may want to visit this forgiveness thing. It's something that he hit over and over again. And when we pray, Jesus taught us to pray this. It's really a weird thing when you think about it. I really wish he hadn't said it. He's in essence saying this: forgive me in equal measure to my forgiving. Only forgive me as much as I forgive is really the true translation as you break it down in its essence, what it truly means from the New Testament Greek to our current understanding. It is forgive me in proportion to my forgiving. Forgive me as much as I am willing to forgive. Right? So it's almost like, I kind of just wish it read like this: forgive my debts. We go right from daily bread to forgive my debts. I like that. Would you give me, of course, I don't know that I like daily bread. I kind of would like, give me a plethora. Allow me to hoard resources. Anyway, back to this. As we. 4 letters, 2 words, deep impact, as we. See, Jesus understood in the economy of eternity that forgiveness is the most influential component to freedom. I think the most powerful thing on planet Earth is not the atomic bomb, nor is it money and governments and power and elected officials. It's freedom that comes through forgiveness. It's the most precious thing you'll ever receive and the most cherished thing you could ever give. That means it's not easy, but it's worth it. Matthew 18, if you brought your Bible, you can look there. There will be portions of the scripture on the screen behind you. And we're going to look at a story where Jesus is he's teaching a parable. A parable is a story with a meaning. It's a deeper meaning, but it's using a common theme of the day to get to the deeper point. And we get to 18, verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? That's a pretty fair question. And then Peter, being really, wanting to get an endorsement by Jesus, says, up to 7 times? Right? Because 7 is the number of completion. I shared that a few weeks ago in a teaching, how 7 in the book of Ruth, right, when we were going through that, the number 7 is the number of completion. It is a number of blessing. So he is saying, if I do it up to 7 times, that's the righteous number, right? That's the right doing number. That's the number I should aim for. And Jesus, I wonder what Jesus' body language was saying at that moment. He replied in verse 22, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Then I wonder what Peter's body language did at that moment, like, have you met my brother? That's what Peter was thinking. And then Jesus went on with this, verse 23. Therefore the kingdom of heaven is like. The kingdom of heaven is like, he says. You can understand the kingdom of heaven because the story I'm about to tell you illustrates the kingdom. These are Jesus' words. And he paints this parable picture of a servant so there's a king who is going to call in all his accounts. He's going to settle all the accounts. He wants to make right all the numbers, and he wants to bring reconciliation to all outstanding debts owed to him in his kingdom. So he calls a servant who owes him 10,000 denarii, which is a really significant large sum of money. And the guy has no way to repay it. So the king says, I'm going to throw you in prison. I'm going to have you sold. I'm going to have your wife sold and your kids sold and all your stuff sold to settle the account. And the man threw himself on the floor and begged the king for mercy. Mercy, withholding the bad consequences that you deserve. That's mercy. He's begging for mercy. And so the king grants him mercy and says, go on your way, your debt's canceled. And the guy walks out. Jesus continues to tell the story. And the man walks out, the servant who had just been forgiven a huge debt. And he has his life back. And he sees somebody that owes him 100 denarii. A much, much smaller sum. A fraction, minuscule by comparison. And he grabs a hold of him and he's shaking him and he's saying, How can you stand to live with yourself not paying me? I demand payment. He has him thrown in prison until he can pay. Some other people see this going on. Jesus again telling this illustrative parable story. Some other servants see it happening and they go to the king and they say, we're distressed. I can't believe he just did that. We know what you did for him. And then we watch what he did to them. And the king calls him back in. Because see, here's what I want you to realize. Forgiveness may not be easy, but it's necessary. In your life, in my life, in our lives, forgiveness may not be easy, but it is necessary. In the kingdom economy, forgiveness is a very necessary component to the Christ-centered life. And I know that people walk into these doors every week with hurts, with habits, and with hang-ups. Many of them having to do with forgiveness issues in your life. Churches are full of hurting people, and that's a good thing. We're not perfect. We're purposed. Forgiveness may not be easy, but it is necessary. So verse 32 of chapter 18, we read this. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, get this. Don't you wish Jesus would have just said, At the end, before verse 32, so be nice to each other. Wouldn't that have been, it just would have felt better for me. Then the master called in the servant, and he said, you wicked servant, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger. These are Jesus' words, in anger. In anger. Get that, in anger. Those are the words of Jesus. In the story, he's saying in anger, right? The kingdom of heaven is like this, the king in anger, right? Let's just, in this world where everybody gets a trophy for participation, right? Let's just get this. Don't allow it to be lost on you. He said the kingdom of heaven is like this. There's a king. He forgives. The servant who's been forgiven much goes out and doesn't. He comes back, and the master, the king, in anger, wow, I wish he didn't say that either. Turned him over to the jailers to be tortured. Looks like an interesting flannel graph for Sunday school. Until he should pay back all he owed. Verse 35, this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother from your cardia, your heart. From the center, the essential component of the operating system of your life, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Not a mental check mark that you make, not a religious act that you follow, not a mask you put on, but from your cardia, your heart. This is how, in anger, you'll be turned over to be, this whole forgiveness thing, it's like, are you kidding me? What happened to, Jesus just loves everybody. He does love everybody, but you know what I found about people who love each other is they tell each other the truth even when it's hard. I know that doesn't play well today, does it? In a world where we're just meant to feel good, where we have instant gratification, where we're angry over insignificant things, and then we're unmoved over major things. This is hard. But these are the words of Jesus, and I believe the words of Jesus ring true in 2016, just like they did when he was speaking them for the first time, but it's still hard. So what do we do with the hard teachings of Jesus, right? We know what to do with the love and grace and mercy and comfort teachings of Jesus, but what do we do when it requires of us to wrestle and struggle with the hard? Do we ignore it or do we embrace it? Do we act like it's meant for somebody else? The word each in verse 35, this is how my heavenly Father will deal with each. There is no escape clause. There is no exclusion clause, right? There is only the conditional clause that I have to engage. And that's really where it's hard. Because see, if forgiveness were a one-time and done thing, it wouldn't be so bad. But it's an ongoing maturity and growth mechanism for the follower of Christ throughout our life. It has a beginning point, but it doesn't have an ending point until we step from this life into eternity with the Father. I wish that's all Jesus said about that. That'd make it easier, but it's not. He goes on to say a lot about it. Thomas Watson, not the golfer, but the 1600s Puritan, notable theologian of the Puritan movement, said, a man can as well go to hell for not forgiving as for not believing. We don't say the word hell anymore because that's not user-friendly. That's not seeker sensitive. That's not easy for us to wrap our minds and hearts around. But see, here's the thing. I think when there is such a great king who is lavish in his goodness and his grace and his mercy and says, I want to spend eternity with you forever, and it's going to be beyond your comprehension. I mean, if you think the galaxy outside of our universe is amazing, just wait till you see heaven with me for eternity. And I can't imagine not being with him, because I think that would just enough be hell. But whatever it is, it's absence from the presence of God, from what I understand and study in the Scripture. And this old Puritan said, if to not forgive can send you to hell just like not believing. That stings. Because, see, forgiveness may not be easy, but it's necessary. Amen. Charles Spurgeon, the great Calvinist theologian of the 1800s, had this to say when it comes to this Lord's Prayer: unless you've forgiven others, you read your own death warrant when you repeat the Lord's Prayer. That's strong. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church and the early father of the holiness movement when it comes to forgiveness, said this: we should be rigorous in judging ourselves and gracious in judging others. Jesus went on in Luke chapter 6. He said these words, which I think are hard, but it gets to the theme of what he was talking about all the time when it comes to forgiveness. Verse 37 of Luke chapter 6 says, forgive and you will be forgiven. Would you say that with me? Forgive and you will be forgiven. Forgive and you'll be forgiven. Right? They go together. They go together. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Now see, a lot of times you hear that verse 38 used when a pastor is preaching on giving. And it's taken often out of context because we often only want it to be in certain contexts. But see, Jesus talks about a generosity of your entire life, and to be generous and forgiving, even though it's hard. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. Give, and it comes back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, compacted, right? It's dense. And running over will be poured into your lap, right? But there's a premise. Forgive, and there's a promise, and you'll be forgiven. I like the promise. We wrestle with the premise. Because, see, the premise always has to do with obedience, and the promise always has to do with His deliverance. We like the deliverance, it's the obedience we wrestle with, right? You all need more coffee? Me part. I dig the God breakthrough piece. I struggle with the get yourself in order piece. Right? And I think that's the human condition. I think that's the human condition of really great people and really kind people and really broken people and really trying people and really well-meaning people. It's a human condition that we like the God part, but we struggle with the my part. But all throughout, this New Testament, beginning in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we read the words of Jesus in red letters in most Bibles. And there are so many things I just wish He hadn't said, because it requires me it requires something of me. It requires something of you. So what do we do with this? What do we do with the teachings of Jesus that we struggle with? Do we discount them? Do we gamble on the fact that God is love and love only, and He's blind and He's infatuated with us, and somehow the real objective of God is to serve us only, and the whole world does revolve around us like we teach our kids these days? I'm not beating you up. I'm just saying as a culture, we've kind of inverted some things, haven't we? We really have. Because see, as a culture in this world we live in, even in churches, somehow we have taken this idea that we're the king. And it's our kingdom. And He's the inventor that is on retainer to do our bidding. Right? But the truth is, He's the king. He's the author. He's the perfecter. We're His kids. He makes the rules. We now make sacrifice. I know it doesn't pair well, nor does it preach easy. But here's what I think we do with the parts of the Bible that we wish weren't there. Here's what I think we do with the things that we wish Jesus had never said. I think we obey them. And I think we wrestle with them in our obedience, not in our rebellion. Wrestle with them in your obedience of surrender, not in your rebellion of selfishness. Right? Does that make sense? I'm so grateful that God is a God of love and a God of mercy and a God of hope and grace. And I'm grateful that God engages us in the struggle and He engages us with His purpose. I'm grateful that His grace makes up for my imperfections, but His grace in no way nullifies my need for obedience. Does that make sense? Any gospel that preaches cheap grace cheapens the truth of the gospel. Grace is free, but it's not cheap. Right? Grace is free, but it's not cheap. Forgiveness may be difficult, but it's necessary. So what do we do with the words of Jesus that we wish He'd never said? I think we invite those words into our heart, into our lives, into our framework, into our cardia, our heart, and ask God to search our heart and see if there be any wicked way in us. Like the psalmist wrote, search my heart. Inspect my life. And so I want to invite us just to do that today. I want to invite us to do that because, see, I believe that the body of believers we call the church, the body of believers we call Lifepoint Church, I think we come here to celebrate and to learn and to grow and to struggle together, don't we? Right? This church isn't full of perfect people. It's full of imperfect people. Worse yet, it's led by an imperfect person. I had a little boy come up to me today when I came in this morning, and he said, "Do you own the church?" Cute as could be. And I said, "No, I don't own the church. God owns the church." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm the pastor. I'm kind of I give direction to the church." And he said, "Oh, so you're like a junior priest." I'll take it. The truth is, God owns a church. And we're a body of believers. This building isn't the church, it's a tool. I want to have t-shirts made that have a crowd of people, and on top, above them, would have like a stick figure drawing with a steeple. And I want to have a sign that points to it and says, this is a building, this is a church. Church isn't a building, it's people. And as a church, as a body, as an ecclesia, we come together to grow and to struggle. And we're never going to act like the words of the king don't matter. And we're never going to act like they're not there. And we're never going to act like they're easy when they're difficult, right? Because the truth is, this is profitable for us to grow. And so I don't know how it's going for you in the realm of forgiveness, but I know it's necessary. I know it's necessary. Jesus knew it was necessary. You know why Jesus fixated on it? Because the condition of your heart will orient the steps and actions of your life. And when we hold on to hurt, we hold on to the opportunity that we believe we're entitled to hurt other people back. And when we give forgiveness and grace, we are surrendering our right. We're surrendering our right to hold their debt over them any longer. I'm not perfect at forgiving people. I'm a whole lot better at it than I used to be. And it's a grace that I grow in. So I don't stand in front of you to beat you up. I stand in front of you to say, I've tasted and I've seen that this is good.